in this case, Mr. and Mrs. Chen are the plaintiffs who are suing Hong Kong government for indirect causing the death of Sophia. Is that correct?
Yes.
So now we start our proceeding. Start with duty of care.
The Hong Kong government has an obligation to protect its citizens from everything that is known to be harmful. Moreover, it has a duty of care to take care of its trading partners, which means that if Hong Kong is trading with foreign countries, it needs to make sure that it exports safe goods and services to protect consumers of such goods abroad. It is not necessary for the law to dictate this, but this is an ethical action every government should take. Therefore, government should ensure safe production of goods and services. The failure to undergo reasonable regulations on exported goods by the Hong Kong government will encourage the manufacturers to produce substandard goods at lower cost. The duty of government should be to protect local manufacturers and enhance trading. Any incident that would result in the opposite should be prohibited. In this case, the use of sulphur dioxide proved deadly as it resulted in the death of my client's daughter. Therefore, it's Hong Kong government's duty to take adequate measures to ensure that goods and services that are being exported are of good quality and healthy for consumption.
Hong Kong government has already taken care of citizen safety and imposed certain regulations on usage of preservatives. In Sophia's case, it is legal to use sulphur dioxide in food and dry fruit, since it is safe to use it under certain content limit. Moreover, except exceptional circumstances, there should not be duty of care exerted on the government. First, imposing a duty of care on the government may greatly hinder the executive of the government. Since the government is impossible to care about every single case in the society, they can only care about general cases. Second, exerting duty of care on the government may lead to a great financial burden on the government. Since the government needs to take unlimited extra actions to care about every single person, this turns out to affect the financial budget of the Hong Kong government and eventually affects the social welfare of citizens. It is illogical and irresponsible for the government to take this loss.
Okay, gentlemen, we proceed to the breach of standard.
The duty has been breached without any doubt. A reasonable standard here would be the international standard. Any reasonable government would have imposed regulations on the content of its export and would also inspected it before it was finally exported in order to protect itself and the country against lawsuit and scandals. It would have also done this in the name of humanity, even though they're not responsible for the health of citizens residing abroad, but they would still have to care about them to make sure that nothing goes out of Hong Kong which would harm any person who consumes it. This breach has led to the death of Sophia. The seriousness of this harm caused by this breach has crossed the upper limit. Government did not realize the potential danger and with it failed to take greater precautionary measures. My clients have been severely affected by the government's act. Allowing the dried apricots to be exported to Thailand could have affected many Thai locals. So government cannot just say that it avoided such regulation because it was costly to do so. Since human life is priceless and it is difficult to attach a monetary value for every human life, therefore, it is obvious that the potential danger to consumers of such product outweighs the cost of imposing regulations to avoid some circumstances. Therefore, Hong Kong government has breached its duty.
Government has already imposed strict regulations on usage of preservatives and antioxidants, including sulphur dioxide according to Section 132BD. The regulations are set according to internationally accepted safety standard. Under restricted usage of sulphur dioxide, it is safe and will not cause any harm to human. Moreover, government has strict regulations on hygiene situation of food manufacturing. This is to ensure hygienic standard of food products. The above regulations are already generally accepted standards and the government has maintained them. It is impossible for a government to check whether safety produced food will cause harm to people. For example, peanuts. People allergic to peanuts may die, but it is not logical to ban export of peanuts. Besides, for food consumed in Hong Kong, government has already taken the responsibility to impose monitoring on food safety. However, since there are different regulations in different countries, it is impossible and unrealistic for the Hong Kong government to impose export food check, which greatly increased the financial burden. Thai government has its own regulation on food safety and it is Thai government's responsibility to impose import food safety check according to their regulations in order to ensure the food is safe for their citizens.
Okay, gentlemen, we move to causations.
The thin skull rule refers to an additional exposure in tort liability towards persons who are particularly vulnerable or more fragile than the norm. In other words, if a person is negligently injured, the defendant cannot claim the damage to the injured individual would have been minor if he had not had an unusually thin skull. The thin skull rule applies to this case. Sophia, who suffers from respiration problems to an extent beyond the norm, suffers injuries to death resulting from the government's negligence. The damages caused by the Hong Kong government are not discounted, but instead are adjusted upwards to fit the thin skull victim. Thus, the fact that Sophia's injuries are aggravated beyond what would normally be expected because of her unusual breathing problem does not relieve the government of liability for the full extent of the harm that is resulted from its wrongdoing. Therefore, the thin skull rule proves that Sophia's death was caused directly by the government's negligence.
In Sophia's case, sulfur dioxide did cause harm to her, but the probability of this happening to the general public is really low. Only a little amount of sulfur dioxide, which is far below the maximum amount, may trigger Sophia's asthma. And there are two tests we can test for causation. The first one is a but-for test. But for Government Negligence Act, the government letting the company to export the food with sulfur dioxide to Thailand, Sophia may or may not suffer. There is no direct and critical linkage between the government's act and Sophia's death. Besides, the chain of causation is long. In this case, the government let the dry apricots with sulfur dioxide export to Thailand, and unfortunately it was bought by Sophia, and this triggered her asthma. The long chain weakens the cause and effect relationship between the government's act and Sophia's death. Moreover, Sophia's parents are the one who understands the seriousness of Sophia's asthma. They should have the responsibility to check whether the food content may trigger the serious asthma of their child. In this case, Sophia and her parents are contributive to the negligence. Since different people may have different reaction towards the same substance, it is only possible for the Hong Kong government to keep a general safety standard. The second test is the effective cause test. The government in this case just creates an opportunity, but it does not lead to her death. Therefore, Government Negligence Act does not account for an effective cause for Sophia's death.
Okay, we now talk about remoteness and damage of cause.
It was reasonably foreseeable that Hong Kong government should have predicted this outcome. Doctors suggest that intake of excessive sulfur dioxide could induce asthmatic attack, and there is enough awareness everywhere that extensive use of sulfur dioxide in any eatable product can endanger health of humans. Sophia is suffering from asthma. It is rational and legit to predict such outcome. Therefore, Hong Kong government should have considered the drawback of not imposing such regulations and timely inspection on exports. Sophia's death is surely a legitimate consequence of doing so. Therefore, the damage is not too remote. Moreover, my client's daughter is dead due to the government's negligence. Death is perhaps the highest and most intense of all sufferings. It is very difficult to explain the mental trauma Sophia's parents are going through with the loss of their daughter. Their life had been ruined. My clients have lost their potential benefits of having a child, like financial support and care of future living by their daughter. My clients have been psychologically ruined by government's negligence. I cannot explain the loss further, as only the one who has been in the situation can express the loss.
According to doctor's report, Sophia's death may be caused by sulfur dioxide content in the apricots. However, for patients having serious asthma like Sophia, they should be aware of what might be possible to trigger their asthma. Doctors usually remind their patients what food and activities may trigger serious asthma. Asthma patients and their parents should have known that and pay attention to the widely used sulfur dioxide in dried fruits. They allowed Sophia to buy the food, and this is definitely a contribution to negligence. Moreover, the 6 hours before Sophia's death is essential. This shows that Sophia has no immediate reaction towards the sulfur dioxide, and events happened in these 6 hours may also cause deterioration to her situation. In this case, there is no direct linkage between government's act and Sophia's death.
After taking into consideration the law and argument provided by two parties, the court has decided that the defendant, the Hong Kong government, has no duty of care and is not the contributor of the negligence. Court dismissed.